Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Lindsey.
I'm Ron.
And I'm Brian.
And we are here to talk about Major League, starring Tom Berenger, Charlie Sheen, and Corbin Burnson, as well as Margaret Whitten, James Gammon, Renee Russo, Wesley Snipes, Charles Cyphers, Chelsea Ross, Dennis Haysbert, Andy Romano, and Bob Uecker. Written and directed by David S. Ward, released in 1989 on an $11 million budget, it grossed $75 million at the box office worldwide. Let's start. Well, first of all, Brian, welcome. You haven't been here
Thank
for a
you.
minute. Let's start with you. What's your background with this movie?
Oh, man. I saw this for the first time probably in high school. I remember that my dad wanted to rent it once when we were younger. And then when he found out what the plot of the whole thing was and one of the key pieces, he's like, yeah, maybe not. So when we were a little older, we rented it and watched it. So that was my first viewing of it. And, it was fun for us because we were really into baseball. And, I've watched it a couple times since then, but really haven't revisited it a whole lot.
This is one of those movies that I know I've seen it several times, but I've seen the sequels more. I've seen both Major League 2 and Major League 3 Back to the Minors more than I've seen Major League, because Major League 2 and Major League 3 were the ones that I played all the time on HBO or Showtime or whichever one of the premium services had it back then. Probably HBO. Seems like an HBO thing. So, but yeah, I'd seen Major League, probably the cleaned up for TV version on cable. But I don't really have a ton of background for it. I do like baseball, but I'm not a baseball guy. What about you, Lindsey?
I have a similar TV washed experience of this movie. I think growing up, I saw it, and I feel like with a lot of movies that we talk about around this era, the VHS art is what's most memorable for me, because I always saw it at the local Movie Max or Blockbuster or the Yellow Front grocery store, which also rented movies wherever we were at the time. So I watched it, I think, in bits and pieces as I was growing up, depending on what TV channel it was on. But like you, Brian, this is the first time I've really revisited it in a while. And some of it didn't age well, but overall, I would say it was a pretty funny movie.
I don't think there's anything too egregious in it, really.
No.
You look at the stereotypes of the team, and I think there's a lot of that still going on. So
yeah, and I don't think that and maybe they exacerbated it a little bit for the movie, but I don't think it was. I think that's just any team that was called the Indians or the Redskins or the Warriors or anything under that umbrella.
Braves.
Yeah, they all had, the same headdresses and the same tomahawk chops and all that stuff. So I think that was...
I don't think any of them ever did the Indian call like they do in this movie, where the football fans are doing the Indian call, but
The Atlanta Braves still do.
they do. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So, and that really
I know
was
they
the
do the
only
whoa,
thing.
whoa, whoa thing, but
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it, but some of it was, I don't think it aged poorly. I don't know. When the owner walks into the locker room and they're all dressing and she's slap-assing through the whole
I'm
thing.
sure that still goes on today.
I know.
It were a thing, right?
I was yeah, I mean, at the time too, you could take two sides of it. We're just getting political immediately for this show, I guess. That's that's where we're going. We'll digress at some point. But
I mean,
don't
it's
know.
hard. It's hard not to, given all the goings on back and forth about team names and such these days, and how
Yeah.
the Cleveland Indians with that name no longer exist. They've gone the way of
Mhm.
lots of other offensive sports monikers, except for the Braves, who refuse to let it go, and
Yeah,
probably
I'm
will
actually
never let it go.
surprised. I'm surprised they haven't caved to the pressure, to be honest, because everything else has.
Yeah.
I know the Yankees is kind of a slur too, but you'll never see
Oh,
that one go away.
No, and I
yeah.
don't think you'll ever see the Braves go away, but I think you'll see whatever. I know
The
they're
Chiefs, you think the Chiefs will ever give in?
probably not. Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't see either one of those teams ever giving in because they don't have like a racist, big-nosed caricature mascot
Yeah, good
character
point.
anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they did at one point. I know the Braves did for sure. And I'm sure the Chiefs probably did as well, but they got rid of both of those. So, it's not, now they can just kind of say, oh, well, it's an arrow or it's just some,
Yeah.
like a tomahawk with some feathers on it or whatever. And not, Chief Wahoo. That was the Indian mascot that the
Yeah.
Cleveland team had.
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
the only thing that made me cringe a little bit was was all of that. I was
Well,
like, what?
we're only
You
like what,
know.
2 years removed from the Indians not being the name. They've only been
Yeah.
the Guardians for like two seasons. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
still fresh.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
It-
the Redskins are still pretty fresh too. We're
Yep.
only a few years removed from that, but I mean, the the Redskins definitely, well, and I'm as an old white person, like probably can't speak super intelligently about this, but I feel like the Redskins is a way more offensive name than the Indians. Um, but yeah, I mean, that was besides those, goings on in the movie, I didn't really find any like big cringeworthy moments for a 1989 movie outside of that.
hmm
Which is kind of a surprise
It
for
was
like a
fun.
1989 comedy, right?
Yeah.
There should be way more objectionable things happening, and yet it's fairly tame.
Yeah, I
Even
thought so.
by our standards, and even especially by the standards of the time.
Yep. It
I
was a
would agree
fun
with
movie.
that. Yeah. I did like the old pitcher who's the hardcore Christian, and then you got the voodoo
Mhm.
guy, and they're constantly going back and forth. And that was some fun comedy between those two. Never got too like serious, but it was some fun comedy between those guys.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, we see Harris later on in the movie, like riding in the airplane, reading a Hustler. So, is he really
Of course.
that serious about his religion,
Well, there
or
you
is he
go. It
just trying
shows the
to,
hypocrisy, right? Yeah.
or is he just trying to antagonize Serrano about something? Because I think that's how the team vibes seem. The veteran players seem to be antagonistic towards the younger guys, just to razz them about something.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, before we spoil any more, which hopefully anyone listening has already seen it, Ron, do you want to take us away with your plot summary magic?
Yes, gladly. Rachel Phelps has a problem. She's inherited a team she doesn't like in a city she doesn't want to live in when her husband passes away off screen. She's the new owner of the hapless Cleveland Indians, formerly known as the Cleveland Spiders, which is the name they should have gone back to rather than becoming the Guardians, but I digress. Like most people in Cleveland, she wants to jump on the nearest plane headed anywhere else, specifically Miami, where a brand new stadium and a free mansion and a country club membership await her. But first, she has to kill the Indians in Cleveland by killing off their fan support to the point where she can break the lease on their aging stadium and, like LeBron James would decades later, take her talents to South Beach. To do so, she calls in her GM and assembles the worst possible team she can for the least likely coach in their farm system. It's a collection of has-beens, never-weres, broken-down vets, and who's that's. The only star, quote unquote, on the team, third baseman Roger Dorn, can't play defense. The catcher, former All Star Jake Taylor, has two bad knees in the wrong side of his career, straight out of the Mexican League. The team's young talent are a guy who showed up one day with more speed than batting skill that no one knows where he came from, a Cuban voodoo practitioner who can't hit a curveball, and a flamethrowing pitcher fresh out of the California Penal League. Sure, Coach Lou Brown has spent 30 years coaching the Toledo Mud Hens, but even he's got a job turning this whole lot of nothing into something. The team doesn't make it through spring training before they start to fall apart. Veteran Doran can't leave rookie Wild Thing Rick Vaughn alone, picking on the new guy, catcher Jake Taylor's attempts to keep the peace in the clubhouse. While also Jake Taylor's busy chasing after his former girlfriend, who's about to get married. But that's a subplot for we'll talk about later. Aging pitcher Eddie Harris and Cuban powerhouse Pedro Serrano constantly get in arguments over religion, and that's even before Phelps starts to actively sabotage the team. In spite of all their differences, the team keeps hanging around, and with every victory, their bonds start growing. Rachel can't have that, so she starts cutting amenities for the team. The private plane has become the private turboprop. Then the private turboprop gets replaced by the private bus. The showers have no hot water, and the cold tubs have no cold water. Every penny is pinched, and every amenity is eliminated to try and break the team's spirit. Unfortunately, that only gives the team someone to rally against. Owner and former showgirl Rachel Phelps. The team claws their way back to 500 thanks in no small part to Rick Vaughn getting some Buddy Holly glasses and fixing his control issues. The team's disgusted GM breaks the news to Lou, who tells the team that they're fighting for their careers, not just a playoff spot. The team rockets up the standings and captures the final game of the season, bringing them into a tie with the hated New York Yankees. A one-game playoff will determine who wins the pennant. But the personal issues between Vaughn and Doran only seem to grow, especially after Doran's wife sleeps with Vaughn before the big playoff game in an attempt to get revenge on her philandering husband. Rick doesn't get to start for the Yankees game, but when Harris needs to be relieved in the 8th, the team turns to the Wild Thing, who dons his Buddy Holly birth control glasses, steps onto the mound, and faces off against the hated Yankees. Despite the fact that the team is down 2-0, Pedro Serrano casts off Jobu and his reliance on voodoo to finally hit a curveball for the first time and strike a 2-run game-tying home run. Vaughn steps back to the plate, ready to close out the top of the 9th by besting the Yankees hitting champion after Doran tells him to strike this mother out. In the bottom of the 9th, Hayes gets on base and does his thing, stealing second, while Jake Taylor steps to the plate in order to antagonize the Yankees by calling his shot like Babe Ruth in the World Series. He does it not once but twice, but rather than swing away, Taylor fools everyone by bunting. Hayes goes from second to home while Taylor legs out the bunt to first, and the Indians win the pennant. The team celebrates, hugs all around, at least after Doran punches Vaughn in the face, and the fans storm the field as credits roll.
So let's start. Brian, Ron, what worked best for you in the movie? What were, I don't know, some of your notable moments?
I mean, Brian got into it a little bit in the introduction to the movie when we talked about the back and forth between Serrano and Eddie Harris. That was a pretty fun. That was one of the better pure comedy interactions, especially with Harris ending up such a goof and drinking Joe Boo's rum and doing those little things like that to antagonize him. And then when they're in the plane and they're flying through a thunderstorm, kind of like the one we had today that I wasn't sure I was going to make the recording. He looks over and Serrano's crossing himself. And it's just it's a really fun couple of exchanges, specifically between those two guys.
I like the coach, man. He's awesome. Like, he's not even trying to be funny, but he's funny type guy, right? He's just cracking one-liner after one-liner, encouraging all these people to do their best, get in front of the ball. If you don't do it, you have to do this. If you don't do it. And I love the fact that Willie Mays Hayes keeps hitting the pop-ups and all of a sudden he's doing these push-ups all the time and he does it in the game. And that was the best part. Like, I was hoping they would have kept that going. Like when he popped up against the Yankees in the playoff there, I was hoping to see him go down and start doing push-ups and then being like, what the hell, but he didn't, but he did the first couple and that was always a fun thing. But that coach is fantastic. He always has a positive attitude and he's just like trying to give him advice to keep him going and in the right direction. Just funny as heck. So I liked him a lot.
I did really like that Willie Mays Hayes moment where they take him out of the, I don't know, the dorm or wherever they're staying and bunkhouse. And they put him next to the field in the bed, which for comedic purposes was fantastic. And then he just wakes up and, I mean, we've all done that, right? Wake up late for school, late for work, whatever, and just sprint out, maybe pajamas still on, depending on the situation, maybe not. And then he stays on. So it worked out.
Well, my favorite line is, "Damn, cut already?"
No.
That's good stuff.
That was great. And I really like the Ricky Vaughn and the Charlie Sheen moment where he finds out that a red tag in your locker means you've been cut. And it's like the end of the very first practice, and he starts to open his little locker and he hears that, and then he just very gently closes it. Like so sincere and scared and nervous. And you've got this big baddie who just got out of jail, and he's just like, he's just like a little kid, and it was so sweet.
I love when he gets the red tag in there and he immediately goes to the coach's office and starts cussing him out.
Yeah.
For, "You're gonna regret this. I'm gonna show you." Yeah, that was good. Yeah, great. I like that kind of attitude, but one problem: you weren't cut.
I think someone might be messing with you.
You got to do it in your best Coach Brown voice. You can't just say it.
Oh, that's great attitude. But one problem: you weren't cut.
We'll just get to the line readings that are impressions. We'll get to them early and often in this one, because that's a very fun voice to try to do.
I feel like, mine always comes off as like New York waitress that's been smoking 8 packs a day since she was 12. If I tried to do that, I don't. It always goes, when I do the raspy voice, it goes into like the ants from The Simpsons.
Peggy and Selma. Yeah, nice.
Yes.
Yeah. But we'll give it a go later. I'll give it a valiant effort.
I like the scene too where Wesley Snipes' character Willie Mays Hayes makes the bucket catch like Willie Mays did. Comes back, coach says, "Great catch, kid. Do it again, and you're gonna get it," or whatever he says. Don't do it again.
Yeah, he is, and just a great one of those dudes with a great voice, and you don't get a lot of those anymore. Just a dude who makes everything he says sounds cool.
Yeah,
and just like he's just the perfect like zen. Nothing seems to really faze him at any point. Manager, it's great. He's just so deadpan and just so. Like you said, he's probably one of the funniest characters in the movie because he's not trying to be funny, but the way he says things is just hilarious.
Yep. Comes off funny. Yeah. How about Bob Uecker, guys? What a character.
Oh my gosh.
He makes this movie, I think his every scene that he's part of makes this movie, because he's the radio broadcaster and he's just trying to make it sound like the team's somewhat good, and everything is just like over exaggerated. It's the best.
And he's got his fifth of Jack next to him.
Yes. And his color commentator guy who says nothing ever.
Yes. That was great. What a great foil. I even like when he asks, he looks at him and doesn't say anything and then makes some comment like, "Right as always," or something stupid like that. So good. They play well.
He does that a couple times during the movie. My favorite is, "Anything to add, Monty?" No. Yeah. That's why he's the best color man in the business.
That's what it is.
Yeah. His role is just fantastic in this, and just even with the his most famous line, of course, "Just a bit outside," and but he that's lost because the rest of that pitching sequence, I can't believe they're not going for these pitches. Makes it sound like you're so close and yet they're all over the place. And my favorite is listening to him hit the back wall. Oh, just missed that one. That's too good.
It is. I mean, and the team really looks like a bunch of little leaguers, like bad little leaguers, not like good ones at the beginning too. So it's funny to hear the commentary over.
Yeah.
Well, when the most realistic looking baseball player in your movie is Charlie Sheen, you've kind of got a problem.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, I was chatting with Lindsey beforehand, and the guy who plays the old pitcher is just like, you're like, dude, you look like you're in your 50s. Like even Nolan Ryan, the oldest player in baseball, it was 44 when he quit. Like there's no way this guy can pitch in the major leagues and look like that age. Is just kind of weird. And then of course he's the number 2 pitcher behind Wild Thing. But I thought that was funny. And then just all these really over the age players, and somehow they're able to keep up in the majors. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I was thinking how old Chelsea Ross looks in this too. But then I realized that I've seen some, especially in the 80s, everybody looked a lot older than they actually were.
Mm-hmm.
And especially baseball players. Because I play a game on my phone, MLB 9 Innings, and I've got a Reds team, and one of the Reds relievers is this guy with gray hair from like the early 80s, who's like probably 30 years old, but he's got silver hair because he just aged, and he's got a weathered face like that. So that's not inconceivable for the time period. But also, like, I think the whole point is these guys are supposed to be old and broken down or young or too young. So you're going to have these little guys who look like little leaguers and the guys who look like the dads of the little leaguers on the same team.
Yeah, that's a good point. I believe Mr. Ross would have been around 47-ish when he made the movie. So not much older than Nolan Ryan, but still older than Nolan Ryan.
Well, I mean, didn't Jamie Moyer pitch until he was like 52?
No, gosh, no. 49, I think, though.
I mean, close enough. You know,
he was a reliever. He never barely played.
but Eddie Harris throws a junk ball. I mean, if Eddie Harris threw knuckleballs, he could still be pitching today at 70 years old.
That's true. I really enjoyed the part where he was showing Vaughn all the different substances and where he put them on his body, and if they catch on, I just pop a few things to make my nose run so I can use the snot from there to adjust the ball a little.
Yeah, he rubbed a jalapeno. He would rub a jalapeno.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Wow, that's commitment.
It is. It works.
That's commitment.
Ask the Negroes
for sure. Yeah. Speaking of guys who played until they were old, close enough to AARP, Phil Negro.
Phil and Joe. I still remember the game when Joe was the twin, and they thought he was doing something with the scuffing the ball, and he reaches in his pockets, and a nail file comes out of his back pocket, and they throw him out for that. Suspended him for like a week because he had a nail file in his back pocket.
Yep, he was scuffing the ball for sure. But back then, you could get away with a lot more of that stuff.
Oh, big time.
These days, you just have to get designer steroids, which is not as much fun as to think about a guy rubbing, KY jelly or.
Well, they replace the ball every pitch now too. So back then it was you pitched with the same ball until it was hit out of the park, right? I mean, you just kept getting the same ball over and over and over again. So it was easier to scuff the ball. Now you have no chance because they're just gonna throw you a new ball.
So what does, as someone who doesn't watch a ton of baseball, scuffing the ball do? What is the benefit of that?
It allows you on your breaking balls to make it dive faster or curve a little more because the wind catches it and does a little adjustment to it, and they can grip it a little better. Like, so if there's a scuffed area, you can put your finger on there and get a little more grip on the ball to throw it a little quicker.
Cool. So. Yeah. I've gone to a lot of baseball games and I've watched them, but these nuances, like my cousin talks about it all the time, but
they use a substance now that's not illegal yet, but I think they're going to make it illegal, where the pitchers can grip the ball a little better, and then that's how they're getting all the speed from the ball and things like that. And so now there's a lot of people complaining about that because it's legal currently, but they're probably going to end up banning that too. It's some kind of stickum or something.
Yeah, it's like you want to rough the ball up for grip and for speed, but you want to put like greasy substances on the ball for movement. Am I correct?
Correct. Yep.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So I did enjoy going back in time. So I've been a baseball fan since about 86. And, you know, Cleveland's been in our division for so many years now as a Minnesota Twins fan. To remember the time when they were in the other division is kind of fun, with the Yankees and things like that. In the old days when it was, 8 teams per division compared to, 5 and having 4 divisions. So, yeah, memories.
So my question is, who is the designated hitter on this team? You would think it would be Roger Dorn because they talk about he can hit, but he can't field to save his life. So you would think they would just move him to DH, right?
He's the third base.
Yeah, he's
Well,
playing third base.
Where did Pedro play? Outfield?
He's right field, yeah.
Oh, well, they had a bunch of players on the team that they never really discussed. So who knows?
Yeah, I'm sure somebody was platooning at some point.
Yeah,
But that really doesn't matter because while this movie talks a lot about baseball, it's not entirely all about baseball. We've got a couple of different romantic-ish subplots, or at least one romantic subplot and one marital strife subplot.
I think if I could recast any character, it would be Jake Taylor's character because that guy just doesn't come off as a sex symbol to me. I don't know, man. I'm also not a woman, so who knows? But
well, I would agree with you. He doesn't come off as a sex symbol to me either. Maybe in '89 he would have been, but I don't know.
Possible.
I feel like there are just better options.
Yeah, maybe they couldn't afford the better options.
That's fair.
Renee Russo, top notch. She's always been, a lovely woman, still is to this day. But to have her like in this conundrum for this guy who's like done her wrong so many flipping times apparently, and to still want to come back to him, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, that kind of strains credulity, but
it would have been one thing if like they were together and they had a rough breakup, but based on how they talk, it seems like they kept getting into these situations where he was cheating on her and whatnot. So it was like, what attracts you to this guy now, right? At this point in time, because he's old and probably doesn't get any girls chasing him anymore. I don't know.
But I have to say, I did like the scene in the library where they were hashing out their relationship.
Yes.
Well, she said she had a better body than you, and I had to prove her wrong. And everyone looks
stick up for you.
And then she yells, "I do have a better body than her." And everybody looks over, and he's like, "She does." That was really funny.
That was a good scene.
And as much as everyone's jumping on the "I hate Tom Berenger" train, I really like Tom Berenger in this. I wish he didn't have Patrick Duffy's haircut.
Yeah, that could have been it too.
Through the whole thing, because like that hair is Patrick Duffy hair, and you probably could have got Patrick Duffy to play this role. He might have been like your second choice. I feel like Tom Berenger. Well, no, because Dallas was still fairly fresh, so maybe Patrick Duffy was too high priced, and you had to get Tom Berenger. Because I don't think
haircut might have helped a little. I would agree.
A different haircut, I think. But he's supposed to be kind of old and grizzled, and
trying to hold on to the glory days.
Glory days, so maybe that explains the haircut. I don't know, but I can see if you recast him with somebody who's a little more traditionally like leading man, good looking, which is weird to say because Tom Berenger was a leading man in a lot of different stuff. But like, I feel like if you get maybe a slightly older but slightly better looking guy, maybe we push Jake Taylor's age from like 35 to 38. In movie terms, and get like a. I'm not even sure who you could get to be him other than him. Treat Williams is too young for what
Tom
you want.
Selleck, huh?
Tom Selleck, it probably costs way too much. This is still Magnum PI
days.
Yeah, Tom Selleck costs too much. Burt Reynolds wouldn't do it because Burt Reynolds has actually bad knees and he probably couldn't even squat that long. Plus, it was well past his time in 1989. Speaking of crazy hair, that wig would have looked ridiculous in any of those scenes.
Can I ask too, like, when someone's rich and they live on the top floor, that you have to get to an elevator that goes right into their house, nobody could just do that, right? Like they have to have a card or something to get to that level. And then who leaves their doors open all the time that people could just walk right in after following you home?
Yeah.
Like he does it twice. Once when she's there and once when she's gone.
And like she's not in some suburb. Like she lives in Cleveland, which is not one of the safest places. I don't know. It didn't look like it in all of the.
Well, it isn't today, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It wasn't then either. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, even in the intro, I mean, it's showing the seedier parts of Cleveland, which for all I know are the nicest parts of Cleveland, having never been there and only heard about it. But I would not leave my door unlocked.
No,
I did appreciate.
It looks like she has to go upstairs into her own apartment, right?
Yeah.
So there's got to be
a split level.
Yeah, there's got to be some entrance that he had to get through.
Right.
You just don't walk into someone's house like that. Apparently,
and you certainly get to a penthouse. But
in case, before we go any further, I have to say, if my editor at Den of Geek, Alex Bajalit, is listening, I'm sure Cleveland is very nice. He's from Cleveland, and he's a big-time Indians/Guardians fan. I'm sure Cleveland is a great town, and I'm sorry that they're trashing your beloved Cleveland, and I'm sorry that I have probably also trashed your beloved Cleveland at some point.
Hey, man, I'm from Minnesota, and I think Minneapolis is a shithole.
And I live in New Jersey, so come on.
That's America's shithole, right?
I think the preferred nomenclature is armpit, but
still understand that it can be a crappy place to be.
Yeah, that's fair. And
there are nice places everywhere, even in not nice places.
Even in Cleveland,
even in Detroit, there's a nice part of town. It's just 20 miles away.
Detroit. It's not Detroit.
Anyway,
I don't know if anyone remembers those hastily produced Cleveland tourism videos that went viral like 10 years ago.
No, I don't
know when the TV show was on.
It was a guy who made these fake Cleveland tourism videos about the city of Cleveland, and they're the funniest things. One of the lines is, "Our river." They're talking about the river, and it's so polluted that all our fish have AIDS.
Oh,
and it cuts to a shot of like dead fish washed up on the side of the river in Cleveland. And it talks about this train is carrying jobs out of Cleveland. Our main export is crippling depression. Don't stop in East Cleveland or you'll die. That kind of good stuff. Those are some really great videos.
I love that you're describing this on the tail of explaining to your
I didn't write the videos. I'm just telling you what someone else from Cleveland put in those videos. I guess it's the kind of thing where I can say that, but you can't say that. But yeah, they're great, and that's what the opening of this movie really reminded me of is like this. It's like the show in Cleveland in like both an okay light, but like the worst possible light as well. At least it's showing that they really like baseball. But who wants to play baseball in the shadow of what looks to be an oil refinery or a steel
apparently
mill?
Some kids,
kids with black lungs.
And don't correct me if I'm wrong, but when he walked into the stadium to run the bases on his pretend home run to win the ball game, didn't he walk into the Browns stadium? Cleveland had their own stadium by then, did they not?
I don't think they did. I think it was the municipal shared stadium deal.
Really? Oh, I thought they had their own place.
Sure.
Interesting. Yeah, I was like, oh, he's going into the Cleveland Browns stadium. Must be checking out the tourism area. Nope, there's a baseball field in there.
I'm pretty sure it was the same deal where the Reds and the Bengals also had the same stadium. Which was a dump, by the way.
Cleveland Municipal Stadium.
Yeah.
Until 1993. Wow.
Yep. Huh. It's funny to think that how the big move for this team would be to move to Miami, and now that there's a team in Miami, all the owners of the Miami team want to do is move it out of Miami because no one could care.
Nobody comes. Yeah.
There are just other
Nobody in
things to
Florida.
do
Nobody
in
comes.
Miami.
Nobody goes to any
No.
of the games in any of the Floridas. They like their football, but baseball, like Tampa, doesn't attract anyone. I mean, it's like they only like it for spring training. And once spring training's done, they're like, screw it.
I did go to a Miami baseball game just because I knew that their park was really cool because they have the aquarium in there. When I went, they did, and that was a cool experience. But I mean, I think I was there for like 3 innings and literally it was empty. I mean, nobody was there. So
I mean, if you're in Florida, you've got a lot of better things to do with your time than go see a baseball game.
Exactly. There's too many attractions down there everywhere.
Yeah.
To really for them to care. And they get such good discounts on all that stuff too. If you're a Florida resident, you can get into Disney for so cheap compared to anyone else. I have a coworker who goes like every weekend almost, and because it's dirt cheap for them to go, and he just goes to Disney and hangs out.
Oh, that's great. That's great to know because my mom lives in Florida, or my mom has a Florida house, so I can get.
There you go. You should ask her to check in the tickets to Disney and buy some because from what he says, they get an extreme discount for living in Florida.
My sister lives in Florida and she's got 3 kids and she has like year-long passes to Disney. Yeah. She's always, I mean, every year she just re-ups them and they're crazy cheap.
Yep.
And you just go whenever. So.
Good to know.
Yeah.
That'll save me some money for our upcoming Disney trip.
There you go.
In the
fall.
Heck
yeah.
Cool.
Ooh, that's a good time to go to Disney.
Yeah, well, we're going for...
You know what the best time is? December.
Well, we thought about that, but we want to go for Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween.
Scary Halloween, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, and
that's cool.
We've got little costumes and stuff for Maeve to wear.
That's so cute. I have friends who go to that every year, and they love it.
This is completely not related to the movie, but I think we've all kind of... I don't know. Is there anything... that you think didn't work in the movie that we haven't talked about?
Aside from the not locking of the doors, that
right
bothered me.
That bothered me too.
It was, you know what? It didn't not work for me. I think it kind of worked for me. I thought it was cute. It was funny, but
I think that Tom Berenger and Rene Russo are good enough actors to pull off the love. The romantic part of this romantic comedy part of this comedy. Mm-hmm. And I feel like in lesser hands it would not have worked at all, but I feel like they had a pretty good like natural chemistry with each other, and especially when you find out that she also had a background as an athlete, it made their relationship make a little bit more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how this is the part where I thought this is really silly, but Rene Russo plays it so honestly, how books are her life now. Like, this is her entire personality. Her license plate is read. She's got books she's just, this is her entire personality now outside of baseball. And she used to be a swimmer. And at first I thought that's kind of silly. It's a little weird, but it grew on me, and I think it is because she played it so heartfelt and so honestly. So it ended up working for me by the end of the movie.
And I feel like it kind of makes sense. You have to be like an Olympic level swimmer. You have to work so hard and spend so many hours and so much time, and you've got to fill like 80 hours of your week with something else when that stops. So it makes sense that she would just throw herself into, well, I like swimming, but I'm a little too old to make the Olympics now. So I also like books. I guess that'll be my thing. And then she goes and throws herself wholeheartedly into the life of like a special collections librarian, which for most libraries, at least for the people I know who've worked in them, you think it's going to be like an easy 40-hour a week job, but you're always picking up other shifts. You're always doing all this other stuff. You're always volunteering for things. There are things that take place after hours or not your normal work schedule that you have to do because no one else will do them. So I feel like she traded one 80-hour a week thing in swimming for another 80-hour a week thing in librarian, because I feel like she just dove in head first into that, and I think they make it pretty clear, even though she's only referencing like Moby Dick and not something really obscure.
How about that Moby Dick
Yeah.
book that
I know. His like comic
that he
book.
read? Yeah, the comic up version of it. Hey, it had enough details in to answer the question she asked him, so I guess it worked.
Yeah. Was that pre-Cliff Notes? I mean, that's basically
Here's the comic version.
yeah.
Give it to you in lovely pictures.
What's funny is, as a child in the 80s, I read a lot of those abridged graphic novel, quote unquote, versions of things where like every 3 or 4 pages you would have a picture, and it was all like Moby Dick, Treasure Island, The Three
Yep.
Musketeers, Man in the Iron Mask. I was actually just talking about those the other day, and I read a bunch of those when I was a kid. And so it's nice to know that I, as a 6 and 7 and 8 year old child, was reading on the same level as a professional baseball player.
There you go.
Yeah, reading's not for everyone, I guess.
Yeah, why read good when do other stuff good too, or something.
Exactly.
Now, this movie didn't have a ton of needle drops in it, but
No.
the one that really stuck out was that insane Randy Newman song that the movie opens with. How do you guys feel about Burn On?
I don't feel it all. I would go with Wild Thing.
Well, you know what it's about, right? Burn On. It's about the time the lake caught fire in Cleveland.
Oh,
Mm.
that's right.
So
So
it's like
polluted
this
it caught fire.
song about Cleveland that on the surface sounds like, oh, Cuyahoga River or whatever. I don't know why my Randy Newman turns into Bob Dylan for some reason.
Completely different sounds.
Hey. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I thought that was so strange and it's such a weird, like, off-kilter song choice, and he's such a weird off-kilter, like, musician that I felt like it was good for the movie, which is kind of a not a wholesome take on baseball like, you'd see from like Kevin Costner or whatever, but like a slightly warped, slightly exaggerated take on the whole thing.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it again. I never really paid attention to the lyrics.
Yeah,
But
I didn't either.
one funny note here, just I'm looking at the soundtrack. There's a song there called "How Can the Girl Refuse." I'm not sure where it shows up in the movie, but it is by Glenn Ballard. And anyone know who Glenn Ballard is famous? What artist he's famous for making big?
Didn't he write a bunch of those Aerosmith hits in the 90s, or am I thinking of
No, that's Desmond Child.
Desmond Child? Sorry.
Glenn Ballard hooked up with Alanis Morissette and did her
Oh,
first
that
like 3 or
guy.
4 albums with her.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
I remember
I kn-
him showing up in that Alanis Morissette documentary, which is excellent, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to watch that. I probably still know every single lyric to every single song on Jagged Little Pill.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like my first CD that I ever got. So super special. But yeah, I'm outside of that. No, I didn't have any like no big needle drops. And
I
I
think
was
Wild Thing is the big one for me.
I do
oh
like
yeah.
I
And
do
those
like that they
t-shirts they
used
had were dope. Like the Wild
yeah.
Thing merch for him. What a
Mm-hmm.
great
And I want to
idea.
say that the band who's doing it is called X. They recorded it in 1984. But I want to say that in today's time, there's a wrestler. People know him as Dean Ambrose in the WWE. He's John Moxley in AEW. He comes out to, I believe, their version of Wild Thing as well.
He does, because he stole it from a much better Japanese wrestler who
Well,
did the
there you
same
go.
thing. But that's my personal sandbox of dislike against John Moxley. Everything's
Ah.
dope. I'm
Charlie
weed.
Sheen did have a pretty sick, like Roman Reigns style spear at one point in the movie when he think
Oh, that's right.
I was like, oh, yeah, I think Brian's going to be on this show. I need to bring up the wrestling. But when he just comes, I think that was after he finds out, or after the coach tells him that he thinks someone's been messing with him because of the red tag.
Yeah.
And he just comes out and just spear dives right across the locker room.
To Dorn, right?
To Dorn.
Yeah. That's the other subplot. Is like those two don't like each other. And then his wife, Dorn's wife, sees him leaving a party with another chick. And so she immediately knows, well, the one person I can get on the team who will really piss him off, I'm going to sleep with Wild Thing over here.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny, because do you remember Chris Benson, the baseball player?
Oh, pitcher.
Yeah, do you remember his wife? And he met his wife, Anna Benson, who once said that if she caught him having an affair, she was going to sleep with the entire team, which seems like she took the Mrs. Dorn play, and just turned it up to 11.
Yeah. No, that's a little more. I'm guessing
Mrs. Dorn
never
was
did that.
sneaky too, though. She looked like she'd done that before.
Oh, I'm sure she had.
She went right up and she knew exactly what game she was playing.
Oh, absolutely. I guarantee she's done it multiple times. And then she of course, tells him the next day to just let him know. But yeah, no.
And poor
Obviously, he
Wild
doesn't
Thing,
care.
tying back to his naivete, had no idea what he was getting into.
Nope. Not until she told him who she was.
It's true.
Shit.
What a sweet character, though. Like, yeah, I just got out of jail and I'm this big badass guy with this sweet haircut and but he's still just like a shy little kid a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Adorable.
I'm
Sweet Charlie Sheen.
sad that when I had to get glasses, I couldn't find any glasses that had a little skull and crossbones on the nose piece, because that's really what I wanted.
Hey,
and like
major leaguers can afford custom
lightning bolts on the hinges and stuff or whatever.
His first glasses were pretty funny. I mean, I wore my glasses tonight. I had the dark, thick frames, no skull and crossbones, but these are my old ones. Maybe I'll put some on there.
There you go.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the scene when Turner goes and just walks into the guy's palatial estate, and they're sitting there talking, and the old couple are like, "Oh, I hear baseball players make a lot of money these days. What are you doing pretty well?" And he's like, "I make the league minimum." And I thought back, right, like 1989-ish. I don't know what year they're saying they're playing this, but let's say it's 1986 or something, right? I remember in 92, I think it was, when Kirby Puckett got signed to one of the largest deals in history. And his deal was like 6 years, $34 million. And that was like a big deal back then. And I look at today and I'm like, man, you've got people getting that a year now. It's kind of crazy. So I wonder what the league minimum was back in 1989.
I looked it up, and the league minimum in like 1988, which is when the movie was filmed, was $68,000.
Man, just imagine today it's probably about 500,000, probably, if not more.
It's a lot more
Crazy.
now than it is then. That's for sure.
That feels like enough to live on, though.
Oh, for sure. Depending on how much expenses are taken care of by the team versus what you have to cover.
That's fair. Yeah, that's true.
Right. So
Yeah, things were a lot cheaper back in the 80s, and it looks like for all the things that they've cut out, there's still a pretty good post-game meal spread, judging by the meal
celebration,
that they have.
yeah.
The celebration meal, which, man, that watermelon looked good, and I cannot wait for watermelon season to be back.
Soon. Very soon.
Oh, man. Now I'm just thinking about fruit seasons. Thanks, Ron.
Well, speaking of seasons, it is the season for our line reading. If you want to go ahead and jump to that part.
Nice segue.
No, it
Yeah.
wasn't, but thank you.
I think we've covered
So
most everything at this point.
This is a thing that the show has added since the last time you've been on, Brian, but we pick a line or a quote from the movie and we read it in a Shatner voice, or at least that's what it's supposed to be. But sometimes it's been, if there's a character in a movie that has a very distinctive voice, like James Gambon in this movie, we recite the line in an impression of his voice. So we've got the thing what it's supposed to be, which is the Shatner line reading, but we've also got the thing that I usually end up doing because I care little for formats and the restraints of podcastum. But it's whichever one you think would work best for you. Lindsey, would you happen to have one?
It's a simple line, but one that I say in real life more often than I thought I did. And then I heard it. So here we go. Look at this fucking guy. There's the construction worker every time. Like, look at this fucking guy.
Yeah, one of those guys is the janitor from Scrubs.
Yeah, that was that guy. He was the one. He said that line. And I was like, I say that all the time. I wonder if this is the movie where I got it from. And it's just so deep-seated in my memory that I just always say it. But there we go. That's my line.
I will go ahead and do a Shatner line, which I would love a movie in which Shatner was a baseball announcer because I'll get a good Harry Doyle line here. In case you haven't noticed, and judging by the attendance you haven't, the Indians have managed to win a few here and there and are threatening to climb out of the cellar.
There you go.
Excellent. Snaps for Ron. Good job.
All right, I'll give it a try here. Short and sweet. Hats for bats. Keep bats warm.
Nice.
Good one. Good one. Yeah. I love bad impressions. You're really just sacrificing yourself on the altar of dignity. Shouting to the world.
It is very bad to steal Jabu's rum. Is very bad.
What was that? Wasn't there an up
Are
your
you
butt, Jobu?
telling me Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?
Yes.
Oh man. Well done. Well done. I think with that, unless you guys have more quotes you want to give us a reading on, I think it might be time for our popcorn ratings. Ron, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. I'm going to give Major League a large popcorn. It holds up better than it has any right to. For a comedy from 1989, there's not much in the way of offensive, like stereotype things or language or any of the stuff that people frown on today. It's not any of that stuff. The Renee Russo is great, and she really pulls the romance part of the movie together. I can tell just by looking at the movie that Wesley Snipes and Charlie Sheen did so much drugs together off screen. And I don't mean to slander, Wesley Snipes because he may not have done any of the drugs, and Charlie Sheen just did all the drugs. But the important thing is it looks like they got on together and probably had some really good times. And it's a good, fun movie. It's a lot of fun. It's still pretty funny. Just some of the little random throwaway lines, like when Haywood's at the plate and he says, "How's my wife and your kids?" Or "How's your wife and my kids?"
Mm-hmm.
And all those kind of things, just those little one-offs, those little one-liners. It's definitely quotable, especially the Harry Doyle stuff, because I say just a bit outside, quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And among other things that I say. And it's weird that this movie was a fairly big deal for the time, and it's kind of just disappeared. And I don't know why. That doesn't seem fair, because I think it's pretty good, and it's got a lot of people in it that are great, and it's still really funny. So, large popcorn.
Nice. Brian?
I'm going to join Ron in the large popcorn. I had a great time watching this again, and I don't know why it's fallen off either. Maybe because it was a Cleveland Indian team, and if it had been like the Houston Astros or something, maybe it had been around longer. I'm not sure.
That would have
But
held up.
yeah,
And
right.
so many jokes you can make with it.
I know. But I enjoyed this movie. I laughed a lot watching it. Lots of chuckles. Um, Overall, I think it holds up well. I absolutely love Bob Uecker in this movie. I think he's a gem from the day, and anything he was on, he was hilarious in, and he always played the same type of character, no matter what. But it worked, and I like that. Charlie Sheen, great haircut. They should bring that back.
But I think this was like his first big, like, I can do comedy too movie. And then he goes out and he does this one and then Hot Shots and just like knocks it out of the park.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I thought too. Willie Mays Hayes, love that character. And what a different look for what you're used to on Wesley Snipes too. Like he beefed up after this movie for a lot of his roles. He was real skinny and tiny in this one. It was kind of interesting. But overall, yeah, I enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a fun watch, and I would recommend it to anyone who wants to watch it, who can handle watching a Cleveland Indians team win.
For a guy who is in shape, Wesley Snipes has to be the worst on-screen athlete ever. Between this and White Men Can't Jump, he's just absolutely just, he has all the athletic talent of, I can't think of any comparisons that wouldn't get me in trouble with some group or another, but he has all the athletic talent of me, and that's saying something.
Well, he makes up for it in Demolition Man.
Yeah. White Man Can't Jump was another like TV movie that I watched often, along with, I mean, not TV movie, but movie that ran on TV regularly when I was a kid. That I would put right up next to Major League. But yeah, I'll join you guys and give it a large. Why not? I feel like there were some sneaky good acting moments in this too that I wasn't expecting amidst all of the ridiculousness that happened. And yeah, it was just, it's a fun movie, and I'll second Brian and say, yeah, if you can stomach watching the Indians win, then go for it. This is the movie you want to put on. Yeah. So I enjoyed it. Would recommend. Give it a watch. Outside of what we've already talked about, I don't think there was much that, aged super poorly, and, give it a second watch, or third or first or whatever.
It's the last episode of The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live. It just came out. My review went up last week before this drops. And actually, weirdly enough, the show was great. Which is not something I really expected to say about the fourth or fifth spinoff of The Walking Dead, but Denai Guerrera is a phenomenal actor. Who plays Michonne is a great actor and a phenomenal writer, and she had a really heavy hand in the creative aspect of the show. Her and Andrew Lincoln both this time, and I feel like it really was to the show's benefit, because like Denai Guerrera is a Tony Award nominated writer for Broadway, and she's won like Obies and Drama Desk awards and stuff for her writing, and to bring her in and let her do the writing on the show was probably a great idea, because the episode she gets the writing credit for is just basically a two-person play with her and Andrew Lincoln, and it's absolutely phenomenal. So check that out, and check out my reviews on Den of Geek.
I'm keeping it low key right now. Maybe that'll change in the future.
You can find and follow us on social media at FilmstripPod, where we share announcements about upcoming shows as well as other fun content. And don't forget to subscribe and share the show. Bonus points if you leave us a positive review. It does help other people find our podcast, and it makes us feel real good about ourselves. Until next time, thanks for listening to Filmstrip.
Thank you for listening to Filmstrip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Filmstrip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.